They knelt in silence as their father died. In that silence, the galaxy turned. The Medicaid deck of the vengeful spirit had become a sepulchre, its sterile white walls transformed into a monument to impossible grief. 10,000 years of crusade and conquest had prepared the Luna Wolves for every horror the galaxy could conjure. Xenos abominations, warp-spawned nightmares, the cold mathematics of extinction. But nothing had prepared them for this. Their Primarch, the Warmaster himself, lay diminished upon a slab of surgical steel, his superhuman flesh failing breath by labored breath. Ezekiel Abaddon stood closest to the operating table, his scarred features carved from stone, his hands locked behind his back in a grip so fierce that his gauntlets groaned. The first captain had led charges against impossible odds, had shattered fortress worlds and brought entire systems to compliance. Yet now he stood powerless before the simple cruelty of mortality. His Gene Father's chest rose and fell in shallow rhythms, each breath a victory against the poison consuming him from within. Beside him, Horus Aximand, little Horus, blessed and cursed with a face that mirrored their Primarch's own, watched with eyes that had forgotten how to blink. The resemblance that had once been a source of pride now felt like mockery. He bore the Warmaster's features, while the true Horus withered, as if the galaxy itself sought to replace what it was losing. Tarek Torgadon, whose laughter had once echoed through the corridors of the flagship even in the darkest hours of war, stood silent. His jovial mask had crumbled, revealing the warrior beneath, loyal unto death, faithful beyond reason, watching his father slip into the void. And Garviel Loken, the youngest among them, newest to the inner circle, felt the weight of understanding settle upon his shoulders like an executioner's blade. He had seen the truth of this wound, had witnessed what transpired in the diseased corridors of the glory of Terra on Davin's moon. The blade that had struck down the Warmaster had been guided by forces older and darker than any Xenos threat. The wound was not merely physical. It festered with something that defied the apothecarian's every ministration. Chief Apothecary Vadin moved between banks of chirorizing equipment like a priest attending a dying god. His augmented eyes flickered with data streams and vital readings that all told the same hopeless story. The Warmaster's dual hearts fought against corruption that spread through his blood like ink through water. The poison, if poison it truly was, had been designed to kill a Primarch, an impossibility made manifest. His temperature rises again, Vadin spoke, his voice a careful monotone, masking desperation. The fever burns away what little ground we gain. I have administered every counteragent known to the Mechanicum, every antidote cataloged in the Legion's archives. Nothing arrests the progression. Then find something new. Abaddon's words emerged as a growl, barely human. Rip apart every data vault in the fleet if you must. The Warmaster does not die. He cannot die. The declaration hung in the recycled air, like a prayer to absent gods. Around them, the ship's systems hummed their mechanical hymns, indifferent to the drama unfolding in their midst. The vengeful spirit had carried Horus to 100 victories, had been the throne from which he commanded the greatest military undertaking in human history. Now, it served as his deathbed. The Mournival must remain strong, Torgadon said quietly. though his voice carried the weight of forced conviction. If the Legion sees us falter, the Legion sees their Primarch dying. Aximand cut across him, his mirror face twisted with anguish. There is no masking this truth. They feel it in their bones, in their gene seed. The connection we share with him grows weaker with each hour. It was true, and all of them knew it. Every warrior of the 16th Legion carried a fragment of their Primarch's genetic legacy woven into their very being. They were extensions of Horus, living weapons forged in his image. And now they felt that connection dinning, like a fire starved of oxygen. The sensation was unbearable, a phantom pain that no wound could explain, a grief that preceded loss. Loken watched Vaden work, watched the apothecary's increasingly frantic movements betray his professional composure. The Medicae servitors assisted with their programmed precision, but even their mechanical efficiency could not hide the futility of the effort. The Warmaster was beyond their help. Perhaps he had been, from the moment the Anathame's blade, that cursed, stolen weapon, had pierced his flesh. We should inform the Warmaster's equerry, Loken ventured, though he knew the suggestion would find no welcome. Malaghurst should be. Malaghurst knows, Abaddon said flatly. The Twisted coordinates the Legion's response, maintains order among the companies. That is his duty. Ours is to be here when our father wakes. When, not if. The first captain's certainty was absolute, built not upon hope, but upon the fundamental impossibility of imagining a universe without Horus. The Warmaster had been chosen by the Emperor himself to lead the Great Crusade, to unite humanity's scattered children beneath the Imperial banner. Such a figure could not simply cease. The cosmos would not permit it. Hours bled into one another, measured only by the decreasing intervals between crisis points. Twice, the Warmaster's twin hearts stuttered towards silence, and twice Vaden shocked them back into rhythm with equipment never designed for Primarch physiology. The chief apothecary worked with the desperate innovation of a man trying to rewrite fundamental laws of biology in real time. The Mournival maintained their vigil, 4 warriors frozen in tableau of helpless devotion. They did not speak of what would come if the Warmaster failed to wake. They did not speak of succession, or of how the crusade would continue, or of what the Emperor would say when he learned that his most beloved son had fallen to a primitive blade on a worthless moon. These thoughts existed in the spaces between breaths, unvoiced but omnipresent. It was Loken who first noticed the change. A subtle shift in the chamber's atmosphere, a pressure against his senses that had nothing to do with the life support systems or the machines laboring to preserve their Primarch. Something had entered the room with them, or perhaps had been there all along, waiting for the moment when desperation had stripped away their defenses. "Do you feel that?" he asked, his hand moving instinctively toward the bolt pistol at his hip. The others looked at him sharply, their post-human senses questing outward. Torgidon's eyes narrowed. Aximand's breathing changed. But it was Abaddon who spoke, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. "What are you suggesting, brother?" "I don't know," Loken admitted, the honesty costing him. "Something watches us. Something waits." Before anyone could respond, the Medicae equipment shrieked alarm. The Warmaster's vital signs plunged, diving toward thresholds from which even Primarch physiology could not return. Vaden moved with frantic speed, his augmented hands flying across control surfaces, injecting compounds directly into the Warmaster's primary and secondary hearts. Losing him, the apothecary stated, the words clinical but edged with the terror of witnessing the impossible. Massive systemic failure. The corruption has reached critical organs. No. Abaddon's denial was absolute. The first captain pushed past Loken, his massive frame crowding the operating table. You will not take him. Do you hear me? You will not. The question hung in the air. To whom was Abaddon speaking? The apothecary? Death itself? Or something else? Something that lurked in the shadows beyond mortal perception. The Warmaster convulsed, his body racked with tremors that would have killed a lesser being instantly. His eyes snapped open, not the warm brown that his sons knew, but something fevered and distant, looking upon vistas none of them could see. His lips moved, forming words in a language that predated human civilization, syllables that made the air itself contract. Then, like a cord severed, he fell still. The medical equipment flatlined, its unanimous declaration echoing through the chamber. Apothecary Vaden stood frozen, staring at readings that confirmed biological cessation. The Warmaster's dual hearts had ceased their rhythm. The immense lungs no longer drew breath. Horus Lupercal, the 16th Primarch, favored son of the Emperor, Warmaster of the Imperium, was dead. No, Aximand whispered, the single syllable heavy with devastation. Torgadon's knees buckled. The warrior who had stood firm against alien horrors and impossible odds collapsed, his strength finally exhausted by grief. He caught himself against a support pillar. His Loken felt his twin hearts hammering in his chest, his biochemistry flooding him with combat stimulants his body did not need, preparing him to fight an enemy that could not be fought. The gene bond that connected him to his Primarch had gone silent, a void opening where once there had been the constant, subconscious awareness of his father's presence. Only Abaddon moved. The first captain reached across the operating table and seized Vaden by his Medicae robes, lifting the apothecary from his feet with effortless strength. Bring him back. I cannot, Vaden choked out. First captain, the damage is too extensive. His biology has failed at the cellular level. I would need to rebuild him atom by atom, and even then do that, Abaddon snarled. You have servitors, you have vat-grown organs, you have the Emperor's own genetic science at your disposal. Use it, use all of it. I will requisition every resource in the fleet. Just bring him back. Ezekiel. Torgadon's voice emerged broken. Brother, we must face... We face nothing but the task before us. Abaddon cut across him, releasing Vaden with enough force to send the apothecary stumbling. The Warmaster is not permitted to die. Not here, not like this, not on some worthless rock because of treachery and Xenos poison. We are Luna Wolves. We do not accept defeat. The words should have been inspiring. They should have kindled the fire of defiance that had carried the Legion through centuries of impossible wars. Instead, they fell flat. The hollow declaration of men refusing to see what stood before them. A new voice interrupted, cold and measured. The first captain speaks truth, though perhaps not the truth he intends. They turned as one to see the source of the words. Erebus, first chaplain of the Word-Bearers, stood in the Medicae Deck's entrance, his Crozius Arcanum held loosely in one hand, his ornate armor pristine despite the chaos that had consumed the fleet. Behind him, barely visible in the corridor shadows, loomed figures in the same crimson plate. "You dare," Abaddon began, his hand dropping to his chainsword. "I dare, because I serve the Warmaster's best interests," Erebus replied, his voice carrying the same reasonable cadence he always employed, as if discussing ship requisitions rather than standing over a Primarch's corpse. "As do you, First Captain, as does every soul aboard this vessel. But service alone is insufficient. We must act with wisdom as well as loyalty." "Get out," Loken said, his voice low and dangerous. Something about the Word-Bearer's presence set his teeth on edge, a wrongness that defied articulation. "This is a moment for the Legion, not for what? For outsiders?" Erebus smiled, the expression not reaching his dark eyes. "I am no outsider to grief, Captain Loken. The Word-Bearers know loss as intimately as you know victory. We have walked paths you have never considered, and those paths offer hope where your Medicae science finds only death." "Hope?" Aximon's voice cracked. "Our father is dead. What hope exists beyond that horizon?" "The hope of the Lodge," Erebus said simply. "The hope that brothers share when they acknowledge truths the Imperium forbids. Tarek understands this. Sergar understands. Even young Horus has felt its pull." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Loken felt ice crystallize along his spine. The Lodge, the warrior societies that had spread through the Legion like a virus, secret brotherhoods that met in hidden chambers and spoke of forbidden philosophies. Loken had refused their overtures, had sensed the rot at their core. But he knew others among the Mournival had been less cautious. "The Lodge has wisdom your apothecarian lacks," Erebus continued, taking a step into the chamber. "On Davin, among the ruins of that world, dwell those who remember the old ways. Ways that predate the Emperor's reason, that reach into depths the Imperium fears to acknowledge. They can help the Warmaster. They can bring him back from the threshold." "Witchery," Loken spat. "You speak of warpcraft and sorcery, practices the Emperor himself forbade." "I speak of survival," Erebus corrected gently. "I speak of tools that exist. You must trust in methods that serve the greater good, even if they offend comfortable orthodoxies." Abaddon's hand had not left his chainsword, but neither did he draw it. His scarred face worked through calculations that none of them could follow, weighing costs against gains in arithmetic that transcended mere numbers. "What would this require?" The first captain's question emerged carefully neutral. "Merely transportation," Erebus replied. "The Davinite priests maintain a place of healing, a temple where the old mysteries are preserved. If you brought the Warmaster there, placed him in their care, their rituals might accomplish what your machines cannot. It would cost you nothing but a few hours' time and a willingness to explore alternatives." "It would cost us our souls," Loken said, though he knew the words would find no purchase. Desperation had made his brothers deaf to reason. Erebus speaks with honeyed tongue, but his words carry poison. This is the same treachery that brought the Warmaster low. Can you not see the pattern? I see my father dying, Axaman said quietly. I see Medicae science failing, and I see a brother offering help when no one else can. What pattern am I meant to see beyond that, Garviel? The pattern of corruption masked as salvation, Loken insisted, turning to address the others directly. Brother, if there exists even the smallest chance of preserving our Primarch's life, we are bound by duty to attempt it. Would you let your father die rather than risk being proven wrong? The question struck like a physical blow. Loken felt the other members of the Mournival drawing away from him, felt the invisible walls rising between them. In their eyes, he had become the obstacle, the voice of refusal when action was demanded. His warnings, no matter how sincere, sounded like cowardice in the face of desperate necessity. Excellent reasoning, Captain Torgadon, Erebus said, his approval warm and genuine seeming. The Warmaster chose his Mournival well. You understand that loyalty sometimes demands we transcend our comfortable assumptions. Shall I make the necessary arrangements? Abaddon looked down at the Warmaster's corpse, at the face that had led them from Terra to the galaxy's edge, that had shown them how to transform savagery into art and conquest into civilization. The first captain's jaw worked, muscles bunching beneath his weathered skin. Do it, he commanded. Whatever must be done to preserve him. I will answer for this to the Emperor himself if necessary. But I will not watch my father die without exhausting every option. A wise decision, Erebus said, inclining his head with mock humility. The Davonite priests shall prepare their rites. I recommend transporting the Warmaster in stasis, maintaining his physical integrity until the rituals can commence. Time, as you know, is precious. Tarek, Abaddon addressed Torgadon directly. You will do your duty, Captain. As we all must. The dismissal was absolute. Loken had been cast out from the inner circle, his objections marking him as unreliable in the crisis. He wanted to argue, to make them see the trap closing around them, but words had become useless. They would proceed down this path regardless of his warnings, drawn by love and loyalty toward damnation. As the chamber emptied, as the Warmaster's body was encased in preservation fields and loaded onto a grav sled, as Erebus orchestrated movements with the efficiency of long planning, Loken stood alone among the failing medical equipment. He felt the weight of prophecy settling upon him, the knowledge that what transpired this day would echo through millennia, that the choices made in grief and desperation would birth horrors the galaxy had never known. But he was only one voice, and his brothers had stopped listening. The Delphos rose from Davon's surface like a tumor breaking through diseased skin. For temple, for no other words sufficed to describe the structure, defied clean architectural classification. It was equal parts shrine, fortress, and charnel house. Its walls carved from black stone that seemed to drink light rather than reflect it. Serpentine motifs wound across every surface, carved with such realism that the stones seemed to writhe in peripheral vision. Inside, the air hung thick with incense and other, less pleasant scents. The Warmaster's preservation casket had been placed at the chamber's center, surrounded by circles of Davonite priests whose chanting formed a susurrus that bypassed the ears and resonated directly in the bone. They wore robes of flayed skin. Whether human, Xenos, or something else entirely, none of the warriors present wished to determine. Abaddon, the first captain, had not moved since they'd lowered the Warmaster into position. He stood as he had stood on 1,000 battlefields, as if force of will alone could alter outcomes. Around the chamber's periphery, members of the Warrior Lodge maintained their own watch. Surgar Targost, the Lodge Master, monitored proceedings with eyes that gleamed with something more than faith. Hastur Sejanus. No, Loken corrected himself. Sejanus was dead, fallen on murder. These were the brothers who had joined after, who had never known the Lodge's early, perhaps more innocent days. Callus Ekadin, Falcus Kibre, Grail Noctua, warriors he had fought beside, bled with, trusted. Now they felt like strangers, separated from him by memberships and oaths he did not share. Torgadin and Aximand flanked Abaddon, the three of them forming a trinity of desperate hope. Only Loken remained apart, granted entrance by virtue of his more evil position, but clearly no longer welcome among the faithful. The ritual reaches its culmination, Erebus announced, his voice cutting through the chanting with preternatural clarity. The threshold between death and life grows thin. The Warmaster stands at the precipice, and we must call him back. Then call him, Abaddon commanded. I did not bring my father to this place for speeches. Of course, Erebus replied smoothly. But understand, First Captain, what transpires now is not science. It cannot be controlled with the precision you demand on the battlefield. The Warmaster must choose to return. Our rituals merely open the door. He must walk through it. He will walk through it, Aximand said with fierce certainty. Our father does not surrender. The chanting intensified, rising to a pitch that made reality itself seem to flex. The preservation field around the Warmaster's casket flickered, struggling to maintain coherence against forces that should not exist outside theoretical physics. Through the transparent canopy, Horus's face remained slack, his eyes closed, his expression peaceful in the manner of the truly dead. Then, impossibly, he drew breath. It was not the mechanical restoration of respiration that Vaden's equipment had forced upon failing lungs. This was a true breath, deep and purposeful, the inhalation of one waking from restful sleep rather than clawing back from death's embrace. The Warmaster's eyes opened, those warm brown eyes that his sons knew so well, and he gazed upward at the temple's vaulted ceiling with perfect clarity. Father, Abaddon breathed, dropping to one knee. The others followed, a wave of genuflection rippling through the assembled warriors. Even Loken felt his legs weakening, felt the instinctive response to his Primarch's presence overwhelming his caution. The gene bond that had gone silent now blazed back to life, flooding him with relief so intense it bordered on ecstasy. The preservation field disengaged. Horus sat up slowly, his movements careful but steady. He looked down at his chest where the anatheme had struck, touching the spot where the wound should have been. Nothing remained but unmarked flesh, perfect and whole. "My sons," the Warmaster said, his voice carrying that familiar warmth that had won the loyalty of billions. "You have brought me back, stood vigil in my darkness and lit the way home. We could do nothing else, Abaddon replied, his voice thick with emotions he had suppressed for days. You are our Warmaster. You are our father. We would tear apart reality itself before accepting your loss. Perhaps you have, Horus said softly, a strange expression crossing his features. Something between amusement and regret. He rose from the casket with fluid grace, standing to his full height, and the assembled warriors felt the familiar awe of standing before their Primarch. He was magnificent as always, larger than life in every sense, a demigod walking among men. But Loken, standing at the rear of the assembly, felt the wrongness like a splinter beneath his skin. Something about the Warmaster had changed. The proportions were correct, the mannerisms familiar, but there existed a quality behind those eyes that had not been there before. A depth that spoke of vistas no human mind should comprehend. "Where is my legion?" Horus asked, scanning the assembled warriors. "Where are the sons who have followed me from Terra to the galaxy's edge?" "Awaiting word of your recovery," Axaman replied. "The fleet maintains position in orbit. The Legion holds ready for your command." "Good," Horus nodded. "Then we must not keep them waiting. There is much to be done, my sons. So very much. The galaxy burns, and only we possess the wisdom to reshape it from the ashes." The words should have rung true. They carried the Warmaster's cadence, his confidence, his vision. But to Loken's ears, they sounded hollow, like an actor reading lines written by another hand. He wanted to speak, to voice his concerns, but what could he say? That their father had returned wrong? That salvation tasted of corruption? His brothers would never forgive such blasphemy. And perhaps he was mistaken. Perhaps the ordeal had simply changed the Warmaster in ways that would take time to understand. "I owe you my gratitude, Erebus," Horus said, turning to the word-bearer. "You have shown faith when others clung to failing doctrine. The Imperium could learn much from such pragmatism." "I merely serve, Warmaster," Erebus replied, bowing low. "All I have done, I did in the Emperor's name." The statement hung in the air, and Loken felt his blood freeze. There was something in how Erebus spoke the Emperor's title, a subtle inflection, barely perceptible, that transformed reverence into mockery. But the others did not seem to notice. They were too consumed with joy at their father's restoration to parse hidden meanings. "Come," Horus said, striding toward the temple's exit with purpose renewed. "Let us return to the vengeful spirit. Let us show the Legion that rumors of my death were exaggerated. And let us discuss what comes next. The Great Crusade stands at a crossroads, my sons. It is time we chose which path to walk." They followed him, as they always had, as they always would. The Mournival formed up around their Primarch, the Lodge brothers falling into escort positions, the assembled warriors moving with the discipline of long practice. ... Only Loken remained behind for a moment, standing in the temple where death had been reversed through means no loyal son of the Emperor should employ. He looked at the circles carved into the floor, at the symbols that hurt to observe directly, at the altars stained with substances that were definitely not ceremonial wine. This place was corruption given physical form, and they had willingly brought their Primarch here. They had opened him to influences that the Emperor had spent 2 centuries trying to protect humanity from. And now they would take those influences back to the fleet, to the Legion, to the very heart of the Imperium's military might. Captain Loken, Erebus's voice interrupted his thoughts. The word-bearer had remained behind as well, his Crozius catching torchlight in patterns that seemed to spell words in languages Loken did not know. You disapprove of what has transpired here. I do, Loken admitted, seeing no point in deception. This is not the Imperium's way. It is not what the Emperor intended. The Emperor, Erebus repeated, as if tasting the word. Tell me, Captain, when last did the Emperor walk among his legions? When last did he concern himself with the wars fought in his name? He sits upon his throne, lost in projects none may question, while his sons bleed the galaxy red for his vision. Perhaps it is time the sons determined their own path. That is treason, Loken said flatly. That is honesty, Erebus countered. But I understand your reluctance. You are young yet, in the ways that matter. You still believe in absolutes, in clear delineations between right and wrong. The galaxy will teach you otherwise, Captain Loken. It will teach you that survival requires flexibility, that loyalty sometimes demands we question those we serve. The Warmaster understands this now. In time, you will as well. I will never serve the forces you represent, Loken replied, his hand moving to his bolter. I am a space marine of the 16th Legion. I serve the Emperor and the Imperium of mankind. If that places me at odds with you, so be it. Erebus smiled, the expression pitying. Then you have already lost, Captain. The choice is not between service to the Emperor or service to other powers. The choice is between the Warmaster's vision or irrelevance. I wonder which you will choose when the moment comes. I wonder if you are as certain as you believe. The word-bearer departed then, leaving Loken alone with his doubts and his fading certainties. Above, through the temple's entrance, he could hear his brothers celebrating their father's resurrection. Their joy echoed down through the ancient corridors, pure and heartfelt and utterly genuine. They did not understand what they had welcomed back. They could not see the chains being forged around them, link by link, in the name of brotherhood and loyalty and love. They were Luna Wolves, the Emperor's finest, incapable of imagining their own corruption. But they would not be Luna Wolves for much longer. The announcement came 3 days after their return to orbit, broadcast simultaneously throughout the fleet on all command frequencies. The Warmaster stood upon the vengeful spirit's bridge, resplendent in his armor. Every inch the demigod who had led the great crusade to triumph after triumph. Around him stood the Mournival, the senior captains, representatives from every company. The entire Legion watched and listened as their father spoke. My sons, Horus began, his voice carrying that familiar warmth, amplified by Vox systems throughout the fleet. I have walked in darkness and returned to light. I have stood at death's threshold and chosen to come back to you. And in that journey, I have learned truths about our purpose, about our place in the galaxy's unfolding story. He paused, allowing his words to settle, to build anticipation. We have fought for decades in the Emperor's name, bringing compliance to thousands of worlds, shedding blood on battlefields beyond counting. We have been the Luna Wolves, howling in the darkness, striking from shadows. We have served with distinction and honor. But it is time we acknowledged a simple truth. We are not merely wolves. We are our father's sons in every sense that matters. Loken felt ice forming in his gut. He knew where this speech was leading, could see the trajectory as clearly as a bolter rounds are. We are inheritors of our Primarch's vision, carriers of his will, extensions of his purpose made manifest. The bridge erupted in cheering. Warriors who had stood grim and silent for days released their pent emotions in savage exultation. They roared their Primarch's name. They clashed weapons against armor in thunderous approval. They embraced one another with fierce joy. The Warmaster had returned, and now he had given them the ultimate honor, the privilege of bearing his name into battle. Abaddon's scarred face split in a feral grin. "Sons of Horus," he repeated, testing the words. "It fits us well, Father. It speaks truth." "Does it not?" Horus replied, his smile matching his first captain's. "Let the galaxy know who we are. Let them understand that when the sons of Horus come for them, they face not merely warriors, but extensions of their Primarch's will. We are Legion, and we are one." The cheering intensified. Even Torgodon, who had maintained composure through the darkest hours, surrendered to the moment's emotion. Aximand openly wept, his mirror face reflecting joy and pride in equal measure. Throughout the fleet, 10,000 warriors proclaimed their new identity, embracing the transformation with the fervor of converts to a new faith. Only Loken remained silent, standing apart from the celebration, watching his brothers surrender the last piece of what they had been. Baluna wolves had been forged in the crucible of Terra's wars, named by the Emperor himself in recognition of their tactics and character. That name had history, had meaning that transcended mere words. But the sons of Horus were something else entirely. They were not named for what they did or how they fought. They were named for whom they served. Their entire identity subsumed into their Primarch's image. It was not evolution. It was erasure, a final severing of their connection to the Emperor's and they welcomed it with open arms, too blinded by love to see the shackles being placed upon them. "Captain Loken." Horus's voice cut through the celebration, and silence fell instantly. The Warmaster had noticed Loken's absence from the revelry, had marked him as separate from his brothers. "You do not celebrate our transformation. Does the new name displease you?" All eyes turned to Loken. He felt the weight of their attention, felt the danger of this moment. To object now would be to place himself in direct opposition to his Primarch, to his brothers, to his entire legion. But to remain silent would be to condone what he knew in his soul was wrong. "I am honored by your trust, Warmaster." Loken chose his words carefully. "To be called your son is a privilege beyond measure. But I wonder if we do not surrender something essential in abandoning the name the Emperor gave us. We were Luna Wolves before we were anything else. That identity served its purpose," Horus interrupted, his voice still warm, but carrying an edge Loken had never heard before. "But we have evolved beyond those early days. The Emperor is distant, consumed by his own pursuits. He has left the Great Crusade in my hands. Is it not fitting, then, that those who fight under my command bear my name?" "The Emperor is our father," Loken persisted. knowing he was crossing lines from which there could be no retreat, not in metaphor, but in truth. Our gene seed comes from him through you. To call ourselves sons of Horus rather than sons of the Emperor is to suggest ... is to suggest accurately, Horus said, his smile never wavering, but his eyes growing cold. The Emperor has many sons, Garviel, 18 Primarchs, each with their legion. But you are mine. Your gene seed may trace to him through me, but it is I who have led you, I who have bled beside you, I who have shared in your triumphs and losses. The Emperor is a distant father. I am the one who has been present. Do you deny this? Loken could not. Everything the Warmaster said was factually true. The Emperor had not walked among the 16th Legion in living memory. It was Horus who had shaped them, Horus who had made them great, Horus who had earned their loyalty through shared sacrifice and victory. But truth and rightness were not always synonymous. I do not deny it, my lord, Loken said quietly. I merely worry we set dangerous precedents. If we are sons of Horus, rather than Luna wolves, what prevents other legions from following our example? Will the Dark Angels become sons of the Lion? Will the Blood Angels become sons of Sanguinius? And if so, what binds us to the Imperium? What prevents each legion from pursuing their Primarch's vision rather than the Emperor's purpose? The question hung in the air like an executioner's blade. Loken had articulated the fear that lurked beneath the celebration, had given voice to the fracture lines running through the Imperium's foundation. The assembled warriors shifted uncomfortably, their joy dimming as they confronted implications they had not considered. An interesting concern, Horus acknowledged, his tone cooling by degrees. But built on faulty premises, we do not abandon the Imperium by honoring our Primarch. We strengthen it by acknowledging the bonds that make us effective. Unity is not achieved through enforced uniformity, Garviel. It is built upon recognition of individual excellence, working toward common purpose. I thought you understood this. The Mournival was founded on such principles. The Mournival serves you, Father, Abaddon interjected, stepping forward. As do all of us, without reservation or condition. If Captain Loken's faith has weakened, my faith has not weakened, Loken snapped, turning to face the first captain. I question a decision, not our father's leadership. There is a difference. Is there? Aximand asked, his mirror face troubled. To question the Warmaster's judgment is to suggest he might err. Do you truly believe our father capable of leading us astray? I believe we are all capable of error, Loken replied, knowing he was sealing his fate but unable to stop. Even Primarchs, especially when influenced by forces that should never have been consulted. What happened on Davin should not have been possible through any loyal means. The Warmaster was saved through methods the Emperor forbids. Does this not concern any of you? It concerns us that you would rather our father died than set aside your narrow orthodoxy, Torgadon said, his usually jovial features set in hard lines. I stood beside you in that Medicae Bay, Garviel. I watched the Warmaster expire. Every option approved by your precious regulations had failed. Erebus offered an alternative, and now our father lives. That is what concerns me. that you would condemn his salvation because it offends your sensibilities. It is not my sensibilities that should concern you, Loken shot back. It is the Emperor's will. He forbade these practices for reasons we are not wise enough to question. In seeking salvation through forbidden means, we may have purchased damnation. Enough. Horus's single word silenced all debate. The Warmaster descended from the command throne, crossing to where Loken stood, isolated among his brothers. He placed one massive hand on Loken's shoulder, a gesture that could have been comforting or threatening, depending on perspective. You speak from conviction, Captain Loken, and I honor that. It is why I chose you for the Mournival, why I valued your counsel. But conviction without wisdom becomes obstinacy. You cling to rules laid down in Terra's distant halls, rules formulated by those who have never stood where we stand, never faced what we face. The galaxy is larger and stranger than the Emperor's philosophy allows. There exist forces and powers that his rationalism cannot explain away. I have seen them. I have walked among them. And I tell you now, they are tools, nothing more. Dangerous tools, yes, but tools nonetheless. They can be wielded by those with strength and purpose. Horus's grit tightened, just slightly. I am asking you, as your Primarch and your father, to trust me. Trust that I know what I am doing. Trust that the decisions I make serve our highest good. Can you do that, Garviel? Can you set aside your doubts and believe in me? Loken looked up into those warm brown eyes, his father's eyes. The eyes of the being he had been engineered to follow and obey. Every instinct bred into his bones screamed at him to submit, to trust, to believe. The gene bond pulled at him like gravity, making resistance feel like falling upward. But behind those eyes, just for an instant, he saw something else. A flicker of something vast and alien. Something that wore his father's face, but was not his father. The thing that had returned from the Delphos temple looked like Horus, sounded like Horus, possessed all of Horus's memories and mannerisms. But it was not the being who had led the Luna Wolves from Terra. I trust you, my lord, Loken lied, the words ash in his mouth. Forgive my doubts. There is nothing to forgive, Horus replied, his smile warm once more. Doubt is healthy. Blind faith is for servitors and cultists. I want my sons to think, to question, to challenge. Just remember that at the end of questioning comes decision. And I have decided. We are the sons of Horus, now and forevermore. He released Loken's shoulder and turned back to address the assembly. Let word go forth to every ship, every company, every warrior of this legion. We have been reborn. The Luna Wolves are no more. In their place stand the sons of Horus, ready to reshape the galaxy in our image. Let those who would oppose us learn to fear that name. Let those who would join us know they serve the Warmaster's will made manifest. The cheering resumed, even louder than before. The moment of discomfort Loken had created had passed, swept away by their Primarch's charisma and their own desperate need to believe. They wanted to be sons of Horus. They wanted to subsume their identities into his, to become extensions of his will. It made them feel safe, feel purposeful, feel beloved. It made them tools rather than warriors, followers rather than soldiers. slaves rather than sons. And in the depths of the flagship, in chambers where lodge brothers gathered to share secret truths, Erebus smiled and made plans and whispered to powers that had waited 10,000 years for this moment. The corruption had taken root. The greatest of the legions had fallen without realizing they were even compromised. The Luna Wolves had died in that Davenite temple. The sons of Horus would bring the galaxy to its knees. And Garviel Loken, standing alone among celebrating brothers, understood with terrible clarity that he had just witnessed the beginning of the end, not merely for his legion, but for the Imperium itself. The Warmaster had been turned. The 16th Legion had been corrupted. And the Great Crusade, humanity's last, best hope for unity and survival, stood upon the threshold of civil war. He could not stop what was coming. He was only one voice, already discredited, already marked as unreliable. But he could bear witness. He could remember what they had been before the fall. He could hold on to the truth when all around him surrendered to lies. The Luna Wolves were dead, but their memory at least would endure. In the silence between stars, where light itself grew weary and old, something stirred that had been stirring since the first sentient mind learned to dream. It had many names in many languages, but names were merely sounds, and it existed beyond such limitations. It had watched the Primarchs since their creation, had marked them as pieces on a cosmic board, had waited for the moment when the Emperor's greatest gambit might be turned against him. That moment had arrived. The favored son had been corrupted. The Warmaster had fallen. The 16 Legion had been transformed from the Emperor's finest into something darker, something that would serve purposes the Master of Mankind could not comprehend. And the best part, the sweetest irony, they believed themselves uncorrupted. They thought they had saved their Primarch. They imagined they were still loyal, still fighting. They could not see the invisible chains binding them, could not perceive how their every choice had been anticipated and prepared for, could not understand that their very love had made them vulnerable. They were sons of Horus now. Soon, they would learn what that truly meant. The galaxy would burn, and from those ashes would rise powers that predated human civilization, that had been waiting with patience, beyond mortal comprehension, for exactly this opportunity. The long war was beginning, and it would never end. Not in this lifetime, not in 10,000 lifetimes. The sons of Horus would ensure that much, if nothing else. And in the silent places between thoughts, in the darkness behind sleeping eyes, in the whispers that came from nowhere and everywhere, the galaxy's doom laughed soundlessly and prepared for the feast to come. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But war begins long before the first shot is fired. It begins with a single choice, a single moment of weakness, a single failure to see corruption when it wears the face of salvation. The sons of Horus were born in such a moment, and their legacy would drown the galaxy in blood for 10 millennia. They thought themselves loyal. They believed themselves pure, and in that belief, they became the enemy they had sworn to destroy. Such is the tragedy of those who fall. Not that they stumbled, but that they never realized they were falling at all.